perspective, Nijayoni, causing their own bodies, Karma-bhi, by past activities, Bhavanti, appear, Kale, in due course of time, Nabhavanti, disappear, Sarvasha, in all respects, Na, not, Tatra, there, Ha, indeed, Atma, the soul, Prakrito, within this material world, Api, although, Stitaha, situated, Tasya, of her, the material energy, Gunai, by different modes, Anyatama, most different, He, indeed, Bhadyate, is bound. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Every conditioned soul receives a different type of body according to his work. And when the engagement is finished, the body is finished. Although the spirit soul is situated in subtle and gross material bodies in different forms of life, he is not bound by them, for he is always understood to be completely different from the manifested body. Or here it is very plainly explained that God is not responsible for the living entities accepting different types of bodies. Excuse me. One has to accept a body according to the laws of nature and one's own karma. Therefore, the Vedic injunction is that a person engaged in material activities should be given directions by which he can intelligently apply his activities to the service of the Lord to become free from the material bondage of repeated birth and death. Svakarmana tam abhyarcha siddhim vindati manava. The Lord is always ready to give directions. Indeed, His directions are elaborately given in Bhagavad Gita. If we take advantage of these directions, then in spite of our being conditioned by the laws of material nature, we shall become free to attain our original constitution. Mam evaye prapadyante mayam etang tarantite. Bhagavad Gita 7:14. We should have firm faith that the Lord is supreme and that if we surrender to Him, He will take charge of us and indicate how we can get out of material life and return home, back to Godhead. Without such surrender, one is obliged to accept a certain type of body according to his karma, sometimes as an animal, sometimes a demigod, and so on. Although the body is obtained and lost in due course of time, the spirit soul does not actually mix with the body, but is subjugated by the particular modes of nature with which he is sinfully associated. Spiritual education changes one's consciousness so that one simply carries out the orders of the Supreme Lord and becomes free from the influence of the modes of material nature. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadabhayam Gati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakammalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagna tanvitam tam sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Sham Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. My respects to my spiritual master and to all the assembled Vaishnava devotees. So, I'll read the verse again. Every conditioned soul receives a different type of body according to his work, and when the engagement is finished, the body is finished. Although the spirit soul is situated in subtle and gross material bodies in different forms of life, he is not bound by them, for he is always understood to be completely different from the manifested body. So here Prabhupada is elaborating on this point given in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. And it's amazing how each time when we hear transcendental knowledge, there's always the same, seemingly the same message, but every time there's a deeper perspective or a broader perspective on the topic. And such is the grace of Srila Prabhupada that he's given Bhagavad Gita as it is with purports and also his word for word translations in his Srimad Bhagavatam to give us access to the topmost realization of Krishna consciousness. And although, at least for myself, I'm still in the very beginning processes of my devotional life, still there's a lot of nectar that can be had even in the beginning stages of Krishna consciousness, because it is so amazing, and it's the ocean, such a deep ocean. So this topic of having a material body according to one's karma and then acting it out accordingly. And the first instruction, of course, here that we're hearing from Yamaraj, along with receiving the body and acting according to our karma, here we're getting the clear instruction how the spirit soul is completely aloof. It's not bound by any of these material, gross or subtle body. But what is grasping the soul, who is ourselves, is the material nature of the Lord. And here Prabhupada in his word for word, I thought it was really nice how he translated tasyaha, referring to the material energy as her. Here the emphasis is being given that the material energy is, personality is the divine energy of the Lord, and that we hear in Bhagavad Gita that this divine energy of the Lord, the form of the material energy, is very difficult to cross, but one who simply surrenders unto Krishna can easily cross beyond it. So that's the kind of the summary of the this concept of how we are not the body, what is actually binding us, and how if we surrender to Krishna, we can become free from it. But to kind of first go to the beginning part, Prabhupada in his purport, he's explaining specifically about karma and how it's working and how the body we get. Why is this important? Because not everybody is on the liberated platform. And in Bhagavad Gita, we'll hear from Krishna and from Srila Prabhupada in his purport, they're recommending that someone who is not yet on the liberated platform, that they have to act according to their swadharma. Prabhupada is explaining there are two types of swadharma. If you go into the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it's called Knowledge of the Absolute, and Prabhupada is so expertly giving in all of his purports so many hints as to read and study this Bhagavad Gita as it is, because it's filled with all of Krishna's instructions how to get out of this material world. So yeah, going back to the point, I was just checking this purport here. Maybe it's in the 15th chapter, yeah. Okay, so the 7th chapter, it's specifically talking about this material energy and how to get out. But as far as the work that's concerned, I think that I got from the 4th chapter. I was going between the 4th chapter and the 15th chapter. The 4th chapter is talking more about the karma and the nature and working. This 4th chapter, we have 3rd chapter karma yoga, and then 4th chapter goes into transcendental knowledge. And so there, Prabhupada is talking about these swadharmas, how there's two kinds. One is for those that are attached to sense gratification, and then there's the other swadharma, which is for those who are liberated, and that's acting according to the spiritual consciousness of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada is expertly giving that information, how even though one may be materially attached, meaning they're attached to sense gratification, if they act according to the rules and regulations, according to the nature of their body. For example, here in Bhagavad Gita, the example of Arjuna as a Kshatriya or a warrior, he is being told to, fight as his swadharma in the very beginning, because Arjuna is relaying a lot of arguments based on his body and the relationships to his body. So Krishna is responding in that sense of, you should work according to your duty, and in that way you become free from all sinful reactions. So this is one level of instruction. And then, of course, to take it a step further is that when you're doing those activities, then the further instruction is to act with detachment to the results of doing one's duties. And how to do that, to become detached, is when we offer the fruits of such activities to the Supreme Lord. And in that way we become detached. And the recommendation of how to do all of this, of course, is according to our Sangha, our association. So the recommendation is that we associate with those who have knowledge and those who have realized knowledge, so that we ourselves can learn how to apply the knowledge given, so we can act accordingly to our position, which is what is the whole purpose for having the benefit, also for having the guidance of senior exalted Vaishnavas, and of course the spiritual master and the parampara, that we have the opportunity to hear from them and learn from them. In this way, apply the knowledge appropriately. Because when we think of detachment as a beginner, the tendency is to, how do you say, become falsely detached, where we artificially may have detachment, or we may express it in ways that it's not necessarily according to our realization, and um, we act out immaturely, or sometimes, we end up bottling up different things inside, and then it comes out in a very unnatural, unhealthy way. And this is all in relation to, as a beginner, to sense gratification, because that is ultimately what is, that attachment to sense gratification is what is binding the conditioned soul to the material energy, or the three modes of material nature. And so, according to Krishna, he says that those that are in the modes of passion and ignorance, along with those that are foolish and atheistic, they cannot understand who he is. So it's very important to rise above the modes of nature and to actually engage in devotional service in transcendental knowledge. And therefore, we can have an opportunity to actually understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, going back to the purport, Prabhupada is saying that the Vedic injunctions are there so that people can be engaged, persons can be engaged in material activities. And he's talking about applying one's intelligence in those activities to the service of the Lord. So it's not that one has to separately endeavor to perform their work before they can engage in devotional service. Prabhupada is explaining that we do both. We engage in our particular work while applying our intelligence to engage our activities in the service of the Lord. And then, of course, we get a lot of instructions in the 12th chapter, different levels at which one can engage their propensities or their position in devotional service, and what they can do to make some progress in their spiritual life if one is not completely yet surrendered. And of course, the instructions is that one surrender to Krishna. And Prabhupada is very encouragingly saying that he's in the purport, he's saying, in spite of our being conditioned by the laws of nature, we shall become free to attain our original constitution, and that we should have firm faith that just by surrendering to Krishna, that he will take charge of us. And so this whole process of surrender is described beautifully in Bhagavad Gita. And also I was thinking of this song by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, his compilation of songs in his Book of Surrender. So there's the Gitavali, there's a few other ones. But I remember when I was first introduced to the books, I was reading some of Gita, some of Krishna book. And then when I actually met devotees in a temple, they gave me some beads. It taught me how to chant on the beads. They explained a little bit more about different pastimes. And then one thing they gave me was a CD. That time, we listened to CDs of this Saranagati, or the Songs of Surrender. And I had to drive back home, which it was like where I lived and where the temple was is about an 8-hour drive. So on my drive back home, I kept playing these prayers of surrender, and it really it really touched a chord, because beginning of surrender we hear in Gita is humility, and that's one of the first steps in the process of surrender is humility, or dainya. So I thought I would share a little bit of that, but before we go into this aspect of surrender, talking on the other side of what happens when one doesn't surrender, Prabhupada is saying that one is obliged to accept a certain type of body, and according to one's karma. And this is important because Krishna is very merciful, and he would not force us to take on a situation unjustly. So, according to our own desires, our own activities, we receive different bodies, whether it's an animal body or a higher body like a demigod. And so the intelligence of someone who is not surrendered has to surrender, not surrender to Krishna, but surrenders to the attachment of sense gratification. Then they're bound to take a material body to enact out their desires for sense gratification in various ways. And so this getting a body and losing a body and getting another body and losing another body, this is the cycle of birth and death. And it's not necessarily here saying that we are, I mean, of course, it's not saying that we as the soul are bound by these bodies, but, excuse me, but we are bound by the modes associated with the work, which then gives us a particular body, which then we are forced to act according to that body. And it's generally associated with different levels of sinful activity, because everything in this material world has some fault, some tinge of sin. And why is that? Because the very nature of conditioned souls is to act independently of Krishna and to try to enjoy the sense gratification, meaning the material senses, which actually don't belong to us. It belongs to the Lord. We are just using the energy and trying to enjoy the energy. And actually, this all belongs to Krishna. And the main difference is Krishna also has senses, and he also gets pleasure. And so when we try to give pleasure to Krishna and Krishna senses, then that's the perfection of our engaging in services for his sense pleasure. And this is also described in Gita, how, on the opposite side, this whole creation is compared to a banyan tree, which is in the 15th chapter, which is entitled The Yoga of the Supreme. So here, I'm thinking, usually this is example we hear how satisfying the senses of Krishna is like watering the roots of the tree. So when we satisfy the source, then all the other limbs and tree and the branches and the twigs and the fruits and everything, everything becomes nourished or satisfied. So in that way, when those parts and parcels of the supreme divine source of everything, Krishna, is satisfied, then naturally everything else becomes satisfied in that connection. On the other side of comparison to a tree, a banyan tree, here in the 15th chapter, the Lord is describing the complexity of the material nature, because the banyan tree has roots going in and up and down, and the branches go down and sometimes the roots come up, so it's hard to differentiate which is which sometimes, and a lot of times it just looks like a big ball of tree. Very beautiful, actually, banyan trees. So, like this, it's describing how that is the way that material nature works, is that the actions and reactions are so complex that the conditioned soul, from the platform of trying to work and elevate oneself just on work, it can be quite complex, the karma kanda platform, because there's so many, in one sense, Prabhupada describes the conditioned soul to be eternally conditioned, like, how do you say, like, conditioned for such a long time that it seemingly has no beginning to a point in which the conditioned soul or the soul became conditioned. That's how long the souls have been wrapped up in this banyan like material existence. So to try to figure and wiggle our way out is, practically speaking, impossible. And so Prabhupada is really telling us that there is really no way out of the bonds of material nature. And Prabhupada gives the example of like someone who is bound by their hands and feet by rope. It takes someone who is unbound to untie them. So one person bound can't release another bound person. So that way we're bound by these. Another word for guna is rope. The gunas, the three modes, they're like ropes. So they're binding the soul. So it requires someone liberated on the liberated platform to come and help unbind us, and that is through the process of devotional service, which begins with the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So like this, this divine energy of Krishna, who is a divine personality, Maya, she is binding the conditioned soul, and here, to elaborate on this text that Prabhupada gave reference to in the 7th chapter and text 14, this significance of the supreme position of Krishna in relation to the other demigods, like Brahma and Shiva. They're great personalities and they have a lot of strength. But they themselves say that only Lord Vishnu can give liberation, because Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma can also be subjugated to the divine energy of the Lord, because they're also servants of the Lord. They're also part and parcel of the Lord. So this is also really important for those who are attached to their sense gratification in the material world as a conditioned soul, because the tendency for those who are attached to sense gratification, the tendency is to worship those that are not the supreme. For example, the demigods or the agents of the Lord that provide material facility So there's a big impetus to worship those that can give you material facilities so that one can enjoy, or so-called enjoy. But this sort of desire, worship, and result is described as less intelligent. And it's along with such persons, on the other side is the those who are, they do have some reference of knowledge to Vedic scriptures and philosophy and like that. And but if they have the attachment to sense gratification, it reveals itself up to the point of liberation. Prabhupada describes as the last snare of Maya, as seeing the Lord as impersonal. So this is the last snare of illusion, is that one may be so strongly attached to sense gratification that even if one is hearing and reciting Vedic literature and scripture, but if they have this strong attachment, the tendency is towards perceiving and accepting the Supreme Absolute Truth as impersonal. And here, Krishna and Prabhupada, they're saying that it is less intelligent as well. It falls into the category of being less intelligent because it's ultimately attachment that's won't liberate one. And so when one actually comes in touch with a liberated self-realized soul, then after many, many births, one gets this opportunity. And when one gets this opportunity, then one is actually able to engage in devotional service and become free from the bondage of this material nature. So I just wanted to briefly read some of the prayers by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in relation to this surrender or Sharanagati. Just give me a second here. So in the introduction here, I'll briefly read the there's 7 parts that are described in this song about actually there's 6 steps in order. He's saying there's 6 steps in order to have the perfect surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord. And I'll just briefly go over those 6 steps. And then I thought to just share a little bit of the first song of Dainya and then the 7th song of Dainya to kind of give that idea. Of course, the whole thing is beautiful, and whenever you have a chance, I would highly recommend hearing this wonderful narration given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So it's saying the 6 steps are Dainya, humility; Atmanivedana, dedication of the self; Goptitvivarana, accepting the Lord as one's only master; Avasya Rakshiva Krishna Vishvapalana, faith that Lord Krishna as the sure protector; 5. Bhakti Anukula Matra Karyera Svikara, accepting favorable habits and practices towards devotional service; and 6 is Bhakti Pratikula Bhav Rajanangikara, rejecting unfavorable habits and practices towards devotional service. And then there's another part after this sections, and that's called his Bhajana Lalasa, which is the hankering for devotional service. And then there's a small section of Siddhi Lalasa, which is in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Gita Mala. And then the last 2 songs the prayer they request the Lord. It's a prayer of request to the Lord and glorification of the Lord's names. So I'll just briefly share the English translation to this first song in the Dainya prayers. I forsook you, O Lord, and came to this world of pain and sorrow. Now I submit my tale of woe at your lotus feet. While still in the unbearable fetters of my mother's womb, I saw you before me. You revealed yourself but briefly, and then abandoned this poor servant of yours. At that moment, I swore to worship you after taking birth, but birth came, and with it the network of worldly illusion which robbed me of all good sense. As a fondled son in the lap of relatives, I passed my time smilingly and laughing. My parents' affection helped me to forget the pangs of birth, and I thought the world was very nice. Day by day I grew and soon began playing with other boys. Shortly my powers of understanding emerged. I read and studied my lessons incessantly. Traveling from place to place, proud of my education, I grew wealthy and maintained my family with undivided attention. O Lord Hari, I forgot you. Now in old age, Bhaktivinoda is sad. He weeps. I failed to worship you, O Lord, and instead passed my life in vain. What will be my fate now? So this is all in humility. And then the last song here in humility. So he starts out with this prayer, Prabhu He, which is calling out to the Lord. O Lord, such a wicked mind has brought me into this world, but one of your pure and elevated devotees has come to bring me out of it. He saw me so fallen and wretched, took pity, and came to me saying, O humbled soul, please listen to this good tiding, for it will gladden your heart. Shri Krishna Chaitanya has appeared in the land of Navadvip to deliver you. He has safely conducted many miserable souls such as you across the sea of worldly existence. To fulfill the promise of the Vedas, the son of a Brahmana bearing the name Mahaprabhu of golden complexion has descended with his brother, the Avadut Nityananda. Together they have overwhelmed all of Nadia with divine ecstasy. Sri Chaitanya, who is Krishna himself, the son of Nanda, has saved the world by freely distributing his holy name, his own holy name. Go also and receive your deliverance. O Lord, hearing those words, Bhaktivinoda has come weeping to the soles of your lotus feet and tells the story of his life. And then there's Atmani Vedana, and there's other ones too. Of course, the one that I first heard by Bhaktivinoda Thakur was where he's regretting his position, but he's also calling out to Krishna, Krishna, you are my mother, you are my father, you are my everything. Like that. So there was a lot that was covered here. And a lot can be said. So I'll leave the chat open. If anybody else would like to add or comment or any questions, please do. Got about 15 minutes for any reflections.
Hey, I want to really thank you for reading this piece by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's so very wonderful to hear, very instructive, very inspiring, wonderful thing to hear. We don't usually get to hear these things, and not in Bhagavatam class. I can't remember the last time. The prayers of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Any of them read in Bhagavatam class, it's been a very long time. So very wonderful to hear. very, very wonderful. I'm inspired to do more reading of these things. It's been a while for me. I've been reading other things, uh, but uh, but this is really wonderful. And for me, it really, um, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his great humility or in a an instructing mood, describes himself as having wasted his time or having forgotten the Lord somehow or other. He's being very humble, um, but it's a real um, dilemma for many of us. At least I can speak for myself. I know that um, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's description fits my own life um, fairly accurately. For years of my life trying to support my family, I was really caught up in uh, daily affairs of just trying to secure money and um, so many practical matters of um, maintenance of myself and my family members, and often, regrettably, to the exclusion of Krishna, um, trying somehow or other to keep Krishna in my life, and but having so little time for devotional service. Um, I had a very demanding job. It was, as jobs go, I guess it was good in a lot of ways, but I was required to work 16 to 18 hours each day
Mhm.
on that one job alone, and a minimum of 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days. And then my commute to work was 3 hours. So if you do, you do the math, there's barely time left for sleeping. It
Uh,
was it was extremely difficult, um, and I was working more than one job. That was my main job. Then I had another job that required 4 to 6 hours, and so there was no time for sleeping. I um, I took naps at work between jobs, and I came home from work. There was just time enough for me to take a shower, change my clothes. My wife would hand me a bag of prasad, and I would walk out the door again. Um, on Sundays, I slept all day. My kids didn't know who I was. They would be curious, who's this guy? Who's this guy in the bed on Sundays? Uh, it was terrible, but I was struggling so hard trying to support my family and trying to my ambition was to leave my this was in New York, and I wanted to move to Gita Nagari where there was a Gurukula at the time, get my kids into Gurukula. Um, but my job was paying so well, I couldn't afford to leave it. And I made a plan to actually commute once a week. I was going to have my family live at Gita Nagari, and I would stay in New York and just work and try to commute once a week to see my family. Um, but then Krishna made another arrangement. Um, I got into a serious car accident that disabled me, I was no longer able to work, but I was well insured and I still had the same income level without having to work all those hours. And so I was able to come to Gita Nagari. And my kids spent some time in Gurukula here. Later they went to Gurukula in Mayapur and Vrindavan. Anyway, the problems of trying just trying to exist in the material world, it can be very, very difficult. It's so demanding. It's so hard. And somehow or other trying to remember Krishna, trying to engage in some meaningful devotional service in the midst of it all is very challenging sometimes. Anyway, I'm just reminded of these things by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He knows what the conditioned souls are going through, and he has great compassion for them. Very instructive prayer. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. You're a great, responsible, devotee. Good example. Yeah, very powerful prayers. Would anybody else like to comment or share or have any question? Got about 8 minutes left.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dasya Prabhu.
Yeah, I also, it seems like I'm just hearing these prayers from Bhaktivinoda Thakur so much, especially this one, like recounting his life and how he, feels like he wasted a lot of his life with family life and forgot the goal. But, it's just interesting that, I don't know, maybe for whatever reason, but, and I like that. And then this point you were making at the beginning about Prabhupada's books and just the depth. And I think that was a good reminder because even Madhupalila the other day, she was like talking about one sentence that she read. And it was such a basic point that you hear again and again, but she was saying how it was so impactful and it really, it really like jumped out at her, stuck in her mind. And at one point my guru told me that a good way to learn how to preach is to memorize Prabhupada's purports. So I was doing that, and by doing that, because I was so focused on each line, I was realizing like, wow, this is so powerful. Like literally each sentence just has so much meaning and is like so masterfully created. So yeah, I appreciate that reminder. Inspired to go deeper into the book. Thank you. That's all I got.
Yeah, and this aside from when I first heard of Bhaktivinoda Thakur through the audio, his prayers, also Amala Bhakta Maharaj, he's still with us. He lives in LA. I think he's in his 90s now, but he did a whole audio. I mean, he has so many audios, but he does have an audio of the whole Sharanagati, and that's where I first heard it. He was so kind to me that he gave me a whole USB of audio that he did, and specifically this one of Sharanagati. And so as I would do little cleaning or little things here and there, I would just hear the audio, and it was, yeah, it's really nice because sometimes you may not have the ability or the energy for so many hours to hear, but we can play the audio also if we have to. It's also really nice the way Amala Bhakta Maharaj, he does the audio, but then he has like a background music, and it's really nice. So if you get a chance, you can look it up. I'm sure it's online somewhere. We have about 4 minutes. Would anybody else like to add or subtract or share before we finish today?
I guess if no one else is saying anything, just on this point of reincarnation and different bodies that you mentioned, I just heard, my guru just said that, when we hear that we have to take, that like, sometimes we hear the abbreviated version that like, oh, we go from a cat's body to a dog's body to whatever. But my guru said that he heard Prabhupada saying that that's actually just the abbreviated version. That actually we have to go through every type of cat body, like all the different types of species, all the different types of birds, all the different types of trees. So it's interesting, and I remember just looking at one of the peacocks the other day, and I was like, "Wow, this is such like a low consciousness animal in terms of like you can just see if you observe them that there's not a lot going on up in their head. Just very simple and just like where's food and so I was just thinking, but the soul is eternal, but yet it has to take birth in this very limited kind of consciousness body. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, on a last note, I just thought from a deeper perspective of what Prabhupada gave us, as far as like the Dham, like, of course, it's, these animals' consciousness is lower, but of course, as we know in the Holy Dham, the animals and the creatures that are in the Holy Dham, they're very special. And so, like Gita Nagari is a Holy Dham, and so whoever's here, the residents that are born here and leave their body here, it's not ordinary. And like that, Prabhupada set up many places. He brought forth through his love Krishna's presence, which if Krishna's there, then it's the holy place of pilgrimage. So in that sense, it's another vision to have. It's another level of vision to have when we see other entities. And then just on a small, even if one does not perfect their devotional service, that it continues. And the example of Ajamil, that he had only a small percentage performed in the beginning of his life, but at the end of his life it led to 100% completion or perfection. So like that, we can never underestimate the mercy of the Lord, that whatever we do, it always stays to our benefit. So I'll end there. Thank you very much, devotees. Hope you have a wonderful day in Krishna consciousness. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.